voice can break the dark. A single spark ignites the heart. But if we turn when justice calls, the chains we forge will bind us all. When truth is silenced, when lies take hold, the cost is freedom, the soul grows cold. No one stands tall while another must fall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all. We're mavericks of freedom, rebels in the fight, defending every voice, defending every right. For the moment we falter, the moment we stall, we lose our own freedom when we let others fall. You can't stand free while others kneel. When justice fades, it's freedom they steal. An innocent condemned, a crime unspoken, and with it the bond of liberty is broken. No tyrant rules without our consent. Oppression thrives where silence is spent. Stand for the weak, the silence is small, or freedom will crumble for us all. We're mavericks of freedom, guardians of the light, fighting for the truth, for what is just and right. For the rights of one are the rights of all. We rise or we fall by answering the call. Even those we may oppose deserve the rights we all uphold. For if we deny them what is fair, we build our own prison in despair. The fight's not easy, it never will be, but justice for one is the key to be free. We stand as mavericks, together we strive, defending the rights that keep freedom alive. We're mavericks of freedom, rebels in the fight, upholding every truth, protecting every right. When one is oppressed, we're all in the thrall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all. So take a stand, let your courage rise. Defend the truth, don't compromise. For the soul of the world, the writing's on the wall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all.
Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Howdy. Welcome, everyone. It's Friday, and I got a few phone calls today from people, which I always appreciate and enjoy. And one person said to me, "Do you feel like I feel," or I'm paraphrasing, "did you feel all this doom and gloom all the time? Or is it just me?" No, I feel it too. Until the last 24 hours. Because there has been this massive shift in the tone in the narrative coming from Donald Trump. And I'm finding hope in it. Because he had a call with Prime Minister Mark Carney. And the words that have come forth since are somewhat positive. Trump didn't even call him governor. And they're using words like respect. And so, regardless of what party, what political ideology the current Prime Minister may have. I want him to be successful in a way that benefits all of Canada and Canadians and even Americans in a mutually beneficial way. And so, yeah, the tone has changed. We'll get into that tonight. Also, DEI, issues surrounding that. This law in Arkansas that wants to make certain kinds of haircuts illegal. Oh, yeah, it's a real thing. And the Greenland visit by the Vances today. We'll show you what happened there. And then I'm going to get into some information that I released earlier this week about a sort of a secret Greenland operation from way back in the 1950s that still haunts and influences the relationship between the United States and Greenland, Denmark today. So we'll do that, and that's going to segue into tonight's Maverick Midnight Matinee, which will have a movie related to this sort of secret under ice U.S. base that was set up there. And some other weird stuff too. And with that, because I got this phone call, and I don't want to name names because I don't know, I didn't ask for permission to mention this, but because I had this conversation with a friend today about doom and gloom, I thought, well, I'm gonna start the program off the way that you're supposed to start a good video, and that's to lead with your strongest material. Now, I don't know if this is news, but it certainly is tonight's strongest material because somebody else sent me this video from, I think it's somebody named Politics. And if this doesn't cheer you up, regardless of your political stripes, I don't know what will. I'm liking it. Here we go. I will be right back.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Maverick News. Expose lies and tell truth. The world is watching.
I'm still laughing. It's funny. That was funny. What a change even a day can make. So Trump today did speak with Prime Minister Mark Carney, and yeah, none of this governor stuff. The call was cordial, according to Carney, and Trump also coming out and saying, I mean, it's unbelievable, frankly, the change in the tone. He says that, here, you know what, I've actually got the Truth Social post. Let me show it to you. I should have queued this up first. Anyway, he says that, I'm sorry, I lost it. We're off to a great start tonight. Where'd we go? Come on. There it is. I got it. Okay. I forgot that I had it queued up. Let me show you his post on Truth Social. What a change. This is like a 180-degree pivot from Donald Trump on the tariff issue, and not just tariffs, but Canada. The tone. Look at this. I just finished speaking with Prime Minister Mark Carney of Canada. It was an extremely productive call. We agree on many things, and we'll be meeting immediately after Canada's upcoming election to work on elements of politics, business, and all other factors that will end up being great for both the United States of America and Canada. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Very businesslike, straightforward, respectful. And then in the White House today, Trump had this to say when asked about it during this news conference. Here we go. Here's Trump's reaction to the phone call.
And right now, do you have plans to expand U.S. military presence in Greenland? Is that...
Wait a minute, is that the right one?
We get along very well with Denmark. We've always had a good relationship. Denmark does a lot of business in the United States. We don't do so much there, but they do a lot of business in the United States. And I think they want to see, I think everybody wants to see that work out. We need Greenland, very importantly, for international security.
We're going to get into the Greenland story. I think I've got the wrong portion of this queued up.
We can do without it. We can't. If you look at Greenland right now, if you look at the waterways, you have Chinese and Russian ships all over the place. And we're not going to be able to do that. We're not relying on Denmark or anybody else to take care of that situation. And we're not talking about peace for the United States. We're talking about world peace. We're talking about international security.
And right now, do you have plans
Okay, so sorry about that. That's not the right clip.
In Greenland, is that...
But we're going to get into that tonight, too.
Very well with Greenland. We get along.
We're going to get into that, too. Sorry about that. Let's go to the Carney clip first. How about that? I'll get Trump queued up on the back end. All right, here's Mark Carney and his reaction to this. Here we go. He's going to talk about some other stuff
100 years
here,
ago,
too.
long before Canada became a sovereign nation, these harbors were the first port of call for ambitious, innovative, and brave immigrants who would go on to found this great country. In these harbors, three nations came together under the banner of trade and mutual prosperity to build. Over the years, ports like Pier 21 in Halifax, in Vancouver, and the Port of Montreal welcomed generations of new immigrants ready to bet on Canada. And from these ports, our young countries set out to face tyranny in Europe and to build the foundations of Canadian prosperity, to drive ingenuity and innovation, and cement our status as a global trading power. Not only did these ports shape our economy, they helped shape our identity.
He's in Montreal today, by the
À
way.
quelques centaines de mètres d'ici,
Just to
c'est
let you
la
know,
voie
that's where
maritime
he's speaking
du
from.
Saint-Laurent.
This is where his campaign
Un des
was
grands
today.
projets d'infrastructure avec lesquels on a bâti le pays qu'on connaît aujourd'hui. Un projet qui nous a permis de renouveler notre économie et nos relations commerciales. Un projet qui a rendu le Canada fort. Dans mes premiers jours comme Premier ministre,
He'll come back to English
j'ai
in just
voyagé
a
en
moment.
France et au Royaume-Uni pour renforcer nos liens commerciaux avec ses partenaires, des partenaires
And he'll
viables.
get right into the
Parce
call.
que, encore une fois, on doit renouveler nos relations commerciales. Encore une fois, on doit renouveler notre économie. Today, President Trump and I spoke on the phone. We had a very constructive discussion, and we agreed to begin comprehensive negotiations about a new economic and security relationship between our two sovereign countries immediately following the federal election. I made it clear that I will be working very hard with my colleagues behind me. I will be working very hard over the next month to earn the right to represent Canada in those discussions. Dans l'intervalle, nous avons convenu que les conversations entre le ministre Leblanc et le secrétaire Lutnick vont s'intensifier pour répondre aux préoccupations immédiates. J'ai informé le président que mon gouvernement mettra en œuvre des contre-tarifs pour protéger les travailleurs canadiens et notre économie à la suite de l'annonce de nouvelles mesures commerciales américaines le 2 avril. Ensemble, en tant que Canadiens, nous protégerons nos travailleurs, bâtirons notre économie et garderons le Canada fort. Ce qui est clair est que les relations entre le Canada et les États-Unis ont changé. Ce n'est pas nous qui avons changé. Nous, on reste les mêmes, faibles, fiers et forts.
Sorry to
Right
all our
now,
unilingual Anglophones out there.
As Canadians, we have to look out for ourselves, and we have to look out for each other. Canada is strong, but we're even stronger when we are united. And our response to these latest tariffs is to fight, to protect, and to build. Hier, j'ai réuni mon comité de
Okay.
cabinet.
So there's that. Now let's go to this. Let's go to this with Donald Trump. I've got the clip here now. So here he is, responding to the question about the call with Carney.
Canada's Prime Minister says that they will be implementing retaliatory tariffs. You said if that were to happen, that you would be responding with large-scale tariffs. Will you be following through with that promise?
Well, absolutely, but we had a very good conversation. Mark called me today at 10 o'clock. We put out a statement. We had a very, very good talk. He's going through an election now, and we'll see what happens, but we have Liberation Day, as you know, on April 2nd, because, and I'm not referring to Canada, but many countries have taken advantage of us, the likes of which nobody even thought was possible for many, many decades, And, you know, that has to stop. We're going to end up with a very good relationship with Canada and a lot of the other countries. Some we probably won't. It won't be so pleasant, but I think most countries are agreeing with me. They actually, many of them have actually apologized. They said, look, we have taken advantage. And I don't blame them as much as I blame the people that stood, in this case I can say the men, because so far they've been all men, haven't they? But the men that sat right there and behind the Resolute desk, mostly the Resolute desk, you know. I don't know if you know, you have a choice of 7 desks. The Resolute is the one I like, but some chose other ones. But they sat right behind a desk right in this location, and they let our country be hurt very badly. But I didn't do that. But we had a very good talk, the Prime Minister and myself, and I think things are going to work out very well between Canada and the United States. Yeah.
What a change in tone. So I'll take the win. I think this shows several things at this point. It shows that if you stand up for yourself, if you're being bullied, or even if you're just facing someone that you're in competition with, they at least respect you. I think Carney has Trump's respect now, and that's a good thing. I think Canada has respect from Donald Trump now again. That's important. And we're talking about respect, not fear. The other thing I think that it shows is that the approach just overall from Canada is just overall working. So that's a very good thing. It also shows that Canada has a lot more leverage than people realize. We're more important to the United States than I think even Donald Trump realized. It shows as well that the United States is vulnerable in this trade war in ways that Trump doesn't want to acknowledge, but I think he's becoming aware of. It shows that the auto industry is fully integrated, that we're not ripping each other off. It's mutually beneficial. And that has come, I think, to Trump's attention, because this is specifically today focused on the auto industry tariffs, which last night I showed you from the fact sheet released by the White House after Trump's show in the Oval Office, where he signed the document bringing in the 25% tariffs. Then you get the fact sheet and you find out that in reality, the 25% tariffs don't even apply. They're not going to have much, if any, impact on the Canadian auto plants because it's going to take time to implement it, even when they come in April 3rd. Secondly, because if the vehicles produced in Canada are USMCA compliant and they have 50% even just North American made content, they're pretty much exempt from these tariffs. So if the fact sheet is accurate, if that is what actually is enacted next week, then the whole tariff issue on the automotive, with regard to the automotive sector, it's not going to be a factor. And then Mr. Lutnick told Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, that no Canadian auto plants are going to be closing as a result of all of this. So no Canadian auto plants are going to close, he said. Ford, of course, still has his guard up, as does all of Team Canada on this, saying he doesn't really believe that, and he shouldn't. We should still proceed as though we are facing an existential threat to the country, and indeed we still are. So we should still continue down the path of looking to diversify our trading paths so that we are not so reliant on the United States. People keep pointing to the United Kingdom, to Britain, and saying, you know, you're just entirely reliant on Britain. You're not a real country. You know, no, actually, it's not so much that we're reliant or even controlled by Britain. It's that we are reliant on the United States. And we need to reduce our reliance on the United States to grow up as a nation. And one of the reasons we're in this situation is because the United States is so powerful that we have been suppressed, not so much oppressed, but the United States doesn't want any nation next to it that might in any way pose any sort of threat. That's why we ultimately did not produce the Avro Arrow fighter jet here. They don't want us to be, they don't want a superpower next door to them. They don't really want someone with nuclear weapons sitting on their doorstep, regardless of political ideology or friend or foe, period. They just don't want it. They want to control all of the weapons in this hemisphere. So we as a nation need to grow up, but that means reducing dependence on the United States. It's not so much about reducing dependence on Britain, but we have to do that in a responsible way, being mindful of the fact that we live next to Godzilla and we don't want to get stomped on and crushed. Now, that's for a broader discussion even on another night, and I'm sure we will be getting into that in the days ahead as this election progresses. Pierre Poilievre, conservative leader, he was campaigning today. Oh, but I want to show you this. I wasn't sure if I should show you this, but I'm going to comment on it because I just think that the politics is getting so toxic, and there's such bias in the online media these days that it's really breaking my heart. And I find it frustrating and even sometimes a little stomach churning. And so when I see Mark Carney have a phone call with Donald Trump that seems to go well and gets us back on a more positive track where maybe a lot of jobs can be saved, maybe these tariffs can be averted, maybe we can mitigate the damage from this, find a positive way forward. I'm all for that. I'm like, I'll take the win. And I don't care if it's a liberal, a conservative, a new Democrat, a communist. I don't care who it is that's sitting in that position of, in the prime minister's office, making that phone call to Donald Trump or any president. I want the prime minister to be successful so that Canada is successful, so that we all prosper, period. Prime ministers come, prime ministers go, governments come, governments go, whoever it is, I want the country to be successful. I want the prime minister to be successful so that we can prosper, so that the United States can prosper. So there's mutually beneficial trade, so that we don't have a trade war. So this today, to me, very positive. I'm optimistic about it. I'm feeling good. And yet I'm seeing other streamers online spinning this up. They're upset about it. I get it, but I don't get it. This guy here. Okay? A lot of you know who he is.
Really fishy going on. There's a narrative shift that's happening, and it's right in front of our faces, and I just don't like it. Something stinks. President Trump did not get along with Governor Trudeau or the Liberals for a very, very long time. That was very apparent. And now Canada's illegitimate prime minister comes out yesterday saying, we're cutting all ties with America. It's the end of an era. Our relationship with the United States, as you have known it, is ending right now. That same man just had a phone call with the president minutes ago. And you would think that it would just blow up in his face and he would call him Governor Carney or something like that. No, apparently it was a very good phone call. They see eye to eye on many, many things. So that brings us back to the conversation that was, or the comments that was made by Trump not too long ago, where he said that he doesn't care for Pierre Poilievre and he would rather the Liberals win because they're easier to control, easier to manipulate. And we're seeing that happen right now in front of our eyes. This is not good.
Whatever, man. Whatever. He'd rather see the country suffer. He'd rather see you suffer. Something's wrong out there, man. I don't, there's so much at stake. Let's go to Pierre Poilievre. Toxic. And no wonder people feel so much doom and gloom. 24/7, 365, bombarded with that stuff. Get real. Get real. Here's Polyev on the campaign trail.
Besonder. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here today in beautiful British Columbia. I'd like to thank Stephen Hoffer and Corrine Stavnis for hosting us at Duke Point Sawmill, Western Forest Products. They make wonderful products here that come out of our forests and go into homes and into decking, fencing, paneling, molding, serving domestic and world markets. They are the best of Canada. They bring home the Canadian promise for their workers who get a great paycheck selling wonderful products. But unfortunately, after the lost Liberal decade, that promise is broken. Workers work longer and harder for less. Housing costs have doubled, so our youth can no longer afford a place to live. Liberal taxes punish
This is a
work.
tough on crime message today.
Has
Drugs.
driven 2 million people every month to food banks. This was all before President Trump first threatened his tariffs against Canada. I was glad to learn that the President and Prime Minister spoke today, and like all Canadians, I hope they had a successful talk.
Yep.
And I look forward to hearing about the results that they achieved in that conversation.
Thank you.
For Canadians.
Yes.
So regardless of what was said,
attitude.
what is now clear is that it was a mistake over the last lost Liberal decade to weaken our economy and become more dependent on the Americans. Liberals blocked pipelines, LNG plants, port expansions, and other major projects because of a radical net zero ideology that has now made us more reliant on the Americans than ever before. We need to break that reliance. We need to put Canada first for a change by axing taxes on our industries to bring home more production, by lowering taxes on workers so they can spend at local small businesses, creating made-in-Canada jobs, by removing Liberal laws, C-69, the No New Pipelines law, by getting rid of the energy cap and the industrial carbon tax to bring production back to this country so that we can stand on our own 2 feet and stand up to the Americans with economic sovereignty. In other words, let's put Canada first. But one of the ways we can do that is also by making our communities safe again. Here in British Columbia, people are more afraid than ever before of crime. As our candidate, Tamara Cronus, will tell you, when she goes door knocking, she meets people who are struggling with fear, who are worried their cars will be stolen, that people addicted to drugs might rob them in order to pay for the addiction. We see addicts on street corners hunched over. We see tent cities that are routinely taken down and then pop up soon afterwards. This is the lost Liberal decade that even in the most beautiful places in the world, like Nanaimo, we have seen this promise broken.
And that's where he is today in
Violent crime is
Nanaimo,
up
BC.
50%. Human trafficking up 84%. Calls to the National Human Trafficking Hotline up 238% in the last 6 years. The vast majority of victims of human trafficking are women and girls. And even if they escape and bravely report their ordeal, when their perpetrators are arrested, they are promptly released on bail or later on parole. And then they reoffend and do it all over again. Then there's the guns. 85% of guns used in crime come in through our borders mostly from the United States. Only 1% of our shipping containers are inspected. And the Liberals passed C5, getting rid of mandatory jail time for gun criminals. So the offenders who bring in these arms illegally get to serve their sentence in the comfort of their living room. They passed C75, which allows repeat rampant offenders to be released within hours of their latest arrest, meaning that in Vancouver, the same 40 offenders had to be arrested 6,000 times in a single year. Worst of all is the fentanyl. Opioids have killed 50,000 people during the lost Liberal decade of decriminalization and tax-funded supply. Just to put it in perspective, fentanyl is 100 times more powerful than heroin. 40 milligrams of fentanyl can kill 20 people. A mass trafficker of these drugs is a mass murderer. He's like firing a gun into a crowded room. He doesn't know maybe who he's going to hit, but he's definitely killing somebody. 2 criminals were recently caught here in this area, Nanaimo, at a, quote, safe injection site sanctioned by the federal government under the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act and often funded with your tax dollars. There, these offenders were caught at the site by officers. They were caught with 245 grams of suspected methamphetamines, 230 grams of suspected cocaine, 45 grams of fentanyl. Another investigation led officers to find 640 grams of meth, 280 grams of cocaine, and 190 of fentanyl. They also seized 3 illegal firearms. Sadly, these stories are now all too common after the Liberals weakened our laws and allowed drugs in our streets. And because Liberals have stacked these laws one on top of the other, the problem compounds. Electing the Carney Liberals will mean 4 more years of the same failed Liberal catch and release, soft on crime, hug-a-thug policies that got us into this mess. 4 more years of the Liberals after the lost decade will mean more crime, more chaos, more death, more destruction. It's no secret that the Liberal drug policy has been a disaster, but they're doubling down. They have the same Liberal ministers, the same Liberal MPs, the same Liberal strategists, and the same Liberal policies of the last decade. In fact, they've gotten even more extreme. Now, the Liberals have brought on Gregor Robertson, the radical former mayor of Vancouver, who's known for running dangerous experiments like drug liberalization and so-called safe supply that flooded the streets. A recent study showed that these policies increased opioid hospitalizations by 58%. And the Vancouver police say that 50% of all the hydromorphone they recover is actually tax-funded drugs distributed by our very own government. It's nice to see the experts, so-called experts, finally acknowledging that they were wrong all along. But that does not mean the Liberals understand that. Gregor Robertson was one of the most radical zealots promoting free drugs in our communities, safe injection sites on every street corner, without consultation and regardless of whether people opposed. The courageous Chinese community in Richmond was forced again and again to stand up against these policies, and now everybody is speaking up. But Mark Carney won't solve the problem that his party caused. He said that fentanyl is not even a crisis in Canada. I don't know what world he lives on. How out of touch do you have to be to dismiss the idea of a fentanyl crisis? Or to bring on Gregor Robertson, the most radical pro-drug politician in Canadian history, as a new candidate and likely new minister in the forthcoming, if, God forbid, the Liberals were ever to be re-elected. The record of death and destruction from Liberal policies is one of the great human tragedies of our times, and my heart goes out to all who need help. But the good news is we can fix what they broke. We need a strong, new Conservative government that will stop the crime and put Canada first for a change. We will do that. We will do it with common sense policies that take the dangerous offenders off the street. 1, we will repeal C5 and end house arrest for the most serious offenders. We will also ensure that we reinstate mandatory prison sentences for serious gun, drug, and human trafficking crimes. We will repeal the Liberal catch and release bail law, C75. And we will also stand up against the Liberal policy of putting serious mass murderers in medium penitentiaries by getting rid of Liberal law C83. And that's why I am announcing today that that a new Conservative government will put Canadians first for a change, and we will ensure the monsters who kill our people and endanger our communities go to jail for life. A new Conservative government will impose life sentences for the most serious cases of fentanyl distribution, gun smuggling, and human trafficking. First, if a criminal is convicted of 5 or more counts of human trafficking, they will get life sentences. Second, anyone convicted of 5 or more cases of large Second, anyone convicted of large-scale trafficking of illegal firearms will get life sentences. And third, anyone caught trafficking or producing more than 40 milligrams of fentanyl will get life sentences. Life sentences will be in place to protect Canadians and to end the chaos in our streets. These policies are necessary to protect the charter rights of Canadians. We will end automatic bail for anyone charged with human trafficking, and we will strengthen human trafficking laws so that the prosecutors don't have to prove anymore that traffickers used fear and intimidation. Mark my words, if you exploit and terrorize our people, you will go to jail for life and you will never come out alive. If Canadians choose to put Canada first with a common sense conservative government, these monsters will be off our streets. No more revolving door. We will bring home stronger laws and safer streets. And the choice in the coming election on this will be very clear. After the lost Liberal decade of crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder, do Liberals deserve a fourth term, or is it time to put Canada first and to protect our people with a new conservative government that will put offenders behind bars for good? We will restore the Canadian promise. We will make this a country where hard work pays off by cutting income tax 15%. We will make housing affordable by axing the sales tax on new homes and stimulating municipal governments to speed up permits and free up land so you can afford a place to live. We'll bring home our resource production by repealing anti-development laws and cutting taxes on investment so that we have strength to stand on our own 2 feet and stand up to the Americans. We'll bring home the promise that anyone from anywhere can achieve anything, where hard work gets you a great life on a safe street, in a beautiful house, protected by brave soldiers under our proud flag here in Canada. Canada first. Let's bring it home.
Okay, not going to, hang on just a sec. Let's take one question.
Mentioned the meeting that took place today between Mark Carney and the president. Excuse me. If you are the prime minister at the end of all of this, would you have any preconditions on a meeting with the president? And I know you haven't seen it yet because it just happened. The president's in the Oval Office and he just said, we have Liberation Day on April 2nd. And I'm not talking about Canada, but many, many countries have taken advantage of us. Any thoughts on potentially a changing tone out of the White House?
Well, let's hope that there is a change in tone. We want to put an end to this crazy tariff chaos. We have the best trading relationship in the history of the world.
Right.
Why not continue and grow that trading relationship as two separate sovereign nations? My message to President Trump is that true free trade without tariffs will allow both of our economies to separately grow stronger so that we can fund stronger militaries and more secure borders and make our continent safe against the real risks from overseas. That's the goal that we should all be working towards. And my goal will be to make Canada, regardless of what the Americans do, this has all been a wake-up call for us. By blocking pipelines and LNG plants and slow-rolling resource projects, capping our oil and gas sector, the Liberals have made us too reliant on the Americans. That will end. My government will repeal the entire carbon tax, the energy cap, the anti-pipeline law, C-69. We will bring the hundreds of billions of dollars back to our economy, and we will start selling between Canadians and overseas so that we are stronger, self-reliant, sovereign, to stand on our own 2 feet and stand up to the Americans. In other words, let's bring home the country that we knew and the country that we still love. Thank you very much.
En français.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, and you know, that's it. To me, that's the right response. Carney is his political opponent. He had what appears to be a successful call with Donald Trump, but he made the call in the capacity of prime minister on behalf of the country, the people, and it was successful. And Pierre Poilievre comes out and says, yes, I hope that there is a change in tone, That's the right response, because we all want what is best for the country first. That's putting Canada first. And even putting the interests of the United States ahead of partisan politics. That's the right response, in my opinion. But to simply spin it so that it's negative, and I'm seeing some people doing that online, I don't think it's helpful. It's not productive. I just find that it distasteful, kind of gross, and maybe even selfish, because it generates a lot of clicks. But that's not where we need to be. We have turned a page here. And what I was getting at was Trump, I think, has been given a wake-up call with regard to this as well. Look, I've been saying you can't do this to the auto industry because the industry is fully integrated between the three countries. You have all these components going into these vehicles that are manufactured from, a lot of places around the world. You already have an agreement in place through the USMCA trade deal that includes automotive. Trump negotiated it. It works very, very well. By just imposing this 25% tariff, which was the plan, it throws everything into chaos. It actually hurts the U.S. auto industry because the supply chain is all disrupted and messed up. And by trying to bring all of the production over onto the U.S. side, you undermine efficiencies. You end up making the auto industry overall within the United States much less efficient. And if you cut out Mexico and Canada on the production side, you're also going to reduce your market size for selling the vehicles because you won't have workers producing and making wages to purchase the vehicles in those other countries. Certainly not if you destroy their economies or even hurt their economies to the point where you have a lot of unemployed auto workers up there in Canada and Mexico who can no longer afford to buy vehicles because they're out of work. Better to expand the whole industry and just make it bigger in all three countries or keep it large like that. And in fact, that is exactly what Trump has been told. Not just by any old, person, but by one of his former advisors from his last administration, economist Arthur Laffer. Produced a report, which I'm sure Trump has been made aware of. Here, I'm going to show you within the last couple of days. And I think this might have also contributed to the change in tone. It says right here, here's the headline on it. Noted economist honored by Trump warns his 25% tariffs could add $4,711 to the cost of a vehicle. An Associated Press article. Noted economist Arthur Laffer warns in a new analysis, the U.S. President Donald Trump's 25% tariffs on auto imports could add $4,711 to the cost of a vehicle, and says the proposed taxes could weaken the ability of U.S. automakers to compete with their foreign counterparts, which is what I've been saying all along. In the 21-page analysis obtained by Associated Press, Laffer, whom Trump awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2019 for his contributions to economics, says the auto industry would be in a better position if the Republican president preserved the supply chain rules with Canada and Mexico from his own 2019 USMCA trade pact. In other words, leave it alone, Donald, because the whole industry benefits, the United States benefits most by leaving the trade deal in place that you negotiated during your first term in office. Combine that with what Canada has been doing to respond to the threat of tariffs. This information, no doubt, in the hands of Donald Trump now, and also being pressured in that meeting with the auto industry executives who went to Washington almost a month ago now to meet with Trump and have them tell him, you can't do this. If you do this, their words, you're going to blow a hole in the middle of the auto industry. You're going to destroy the auto industry. So he paused it, gave them a 30-day respite. But I think what you're seeing now is Trump trying to save face, signing that piece of paper in the Oval Office saying, yes, we're going ahead with the tariffs, then saying he's still going ahead with the 25% tariffs, but then quietly that same night later releasing that fact sheet, which I showed you, that shows if they're USMCA compliant vehicles coming out of any of the factories, they're exempt from the 25% tariff, which is the way it should be anyway. It really just means it's kind of status quo on the auto industry side. And then couple that with, you know, this Canada strong stance and response that we've seen coming from across the country, and you've got Carney, who clearly is getting more respect from Donald Trump than Trudeau did. Trudeau was weak, sat at that table, gave the wrong answers. Trump doesn't like him. Bad blood between the two because Trudeau had said some things in the past and had mocked Trump, and there was just a lot of animosity there. Not cool. Look what that got us. At least with Carney, you've got some respect, and I think Polyev would have the respect of Trump as well, although strangely, maybe not as much because Trump doesn't seem to like him, even though he is a conservative. And so we're being told by some, if we don't vote for a conservative government, Canada's going to break up. Well, I'll put this to you. Canadians should be going to the polls and voting any way they darn well want. You should be free to go to the polls to vote for whatever you want without foreign influence or interference. Everybody's worried about Chinese interference in the election. But there's obviously heavy influence coming from the United States and even directly from the White House into our current election. It isn't really proper. The proper thing for Donald Trump to be doing is keeping his mouth shut when it comes to the election, staying out of it and letting Canadians decide for ourselves. You go to the polls, vote for whoever you want. But if people are going to the polls because they feel like there's an economic gun to their head, either from the United States or Quebec or Alberta or any other province for that matter, or even Ontario, if you think that you have to vote a certain way to save the auto industry because somebody's got an economic gun to our head, you think you're going to lose your job because of external political pressures, all really coming from the U.S. in this case. It could be China too, but that's not proper when it's just being artificially generated in order to achieve a political outcome, which might be the annexation or takeover of this country. That's not proper. You can't have a free and fair election like that. That's not free and fair. That's interference. And, you know, if there's American money flowing up here too to fund campaigns, advertising, media, legal challenges, political movements aimed at ripping the country apart, that's not proper either. And at a certain point, you know, it gets to be a gray area, but at a certain point, it becomes illegal. And maybe even treasonous. People, you know, focused a lot on the Liberal government for this post-national, you know, post-nation state stuff, and I totally get that. That's an assault on sovereignty as well. And people are like, Trudeau for treason. Well, he's gonzo now. We had, you know, another guy in there, certainly lingering and very valid concerns about Canadian sovereignty and the way that we interact with other countries, and whether we're going to preserve our national identity moving forward, or whether we'll be absorbed into a larger post-nation state geopolitical reality. I have a lot of views on that too, but we are seeing things change. It's a valid concern. Grant Abraham, United Party of Canada, kicking off his election campaign today, and I have video of that ready to share with you here. Let's run a little bit of Grant if I can find his clip. I had him queued up. Where'd you go, Grant? My apologies. Way too many tabs open again. Oh, here we go. I've got him. All right. Grant Abraham.
And the message really for the post-nationalist globalist agenda is that you will be resisted at all costs. And I don't know that anyone's actually ever said that in Canada to you before, but you need to know that there's a free people in this nation that resist the intentionality of the deconstruction of this nation. And it's time that this nation has this conversation. I would like to move just a little bit to comment on Alberta, because right now Alberta is at the centrality of the discussion around independence. This has a lot to do with energy. There's a constitutional discussion here that I hope I'll get to talk to with Canadians as this election unfolds. But I'd like to say to Premier Smith and to Albertans that there is a peaceful and lawful pathway to secure sovereignty for Alberta in opposition to post-national tyranny. What Alberta needs and what it requires and what it deserves is a guaranteed access to energy corridors in the north, the east, and the west. Alberta requires Bill C-69 to be repealed. That is the bill that prohibits new pipelines in Canada. We need to see the lifting of the ban, the tanker ban off the BC coast, so that tankers can move oil again on sea, on water. We need to eliminate the oil and gas emissions cap. That is an energy cap. We need to understand that. It needs to be removed. We need to deal with the Paris Climate Accord. I find it ironic that the Conservative Party talks about unleashing our energy sector, but adheres to the Paris Climate Accord. It's such a paradox, and I hope Canadians are listening to that and realize that there's hollow promises inside of the omission to act of the Conservative Party in relation to post-nationalism. We need to look at these omissions. The Liberal Party is committing the undermining of our nation, and the Conservative Party has omitted to challenge it.
Okay, so we'll stop there because we only have so much time tonight. But Grant Abraham, one of the smaller parties out there, a new upstart party, and trying to get established in this federal election. So we'll keep a close eye on that and maybe have him back on the program real soon. See where that goes. Let's take a little break. We'll come back with more after this.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay. Still cleaning up some of these tabs so we can get some things organized here. Yeah. I'm still here. I'm with you. Okay. JD Vance. Where did he go? He went off to Greenland today. And Not really, not really friendly territory. Although the White House is trying to spin it up a different way. He says today, as he gets to Greenland, that Donald Trump basically says the president says we have to have Greenland, and we can't just ignore this place. We can't just ignore the president's desires. What Donald Trump wants, Donald Trump gets, I guess. Well, they didn't really want the Vances in Greenland, so they didn't even really set this up with the government of Greenland. But, they have... One of the reasons that the United States can just fly into Greenland that way is because Greenland's a NATO country, and the United States has bases there. And so they just fly into the base. They don't even have to really get clearance or anything from the government of Greenland because they just fly in on NATO business. But, of course, this was supposed to be something of a diplomatic mission, I guess, with Vance. He was originally supposed to go to these dog sled races, but because the government of Greenland is seeing this as a provocation, an act of aggression, even because they see this as a threat to their sovereignty, because Donald Trump has talked about taking over Greenland or buying it, or saying one way or another, it's gonna be ours. So off she goes. She was going to go to the dog sled races, but then the organizers of the big event there, big national thing, I guess, they were told, we don't have any tickets for you and we don't want you. And I'm not sure exactly what the end goal here was, because it was kind of one of two things. Either they thought they were going to be welcomed with open arms and get a really warm reception, with, I don't know, like little kids, I don't know, cheering as Vance gets off the plane and, oh, thank you for coming to liberate us and save us. Or maybe more to the point, maybe I think they were hoping that they might provoke some sort of a negative response, get some sort of an incident there that they could then spin up in some way. I mean, I'm serious about that. So that they could then turn that into some sort of an incident that they could ramp up the rhetoric on in order to justify further actions toward annexing or taking Greenland. But anyway, here they are arriving. Waving, I don't know who they're waving to. You're going the wrong way. You should be going south. It's warmer. Well, so they arrive, and then here's J.D. Vance today. Let's bring it up. Here we go. This is what he had to say.
The president said today that we have to have Greenland. By being here today, are you also conveying that message that the U.S. is very serious in its desire to acquire Greenland?
Well, the president said we have to have Greenland, and I think that we do have to be more serious about the security of Greenland. We can't just ignore this place. We can't just ignore the president's desires, but most importantly, we can't ignore what I said earlier, which is the Russian and Chinese encroachment in Greenland. We have to do more. And what the president said in his State of the Union address, and he was very clear about this, is we respect the self-determination of the people of Greenland. But my argument again to them is I think that you'd be a lot better coming under the United States security umbrella than you have been under Denmark's security umbrella. Because what Denmark's security umbrella has meant is effectively they've passed it all off to brave Americans and hoped that we would pick up the tab. We're simply saying to the people of Greenland, when the president says we've got to have Greenland, he's saying this island is not safe. A lot of people are interested in it. A lot of people are making a play. We know that America cares about the security of this island for the sake of the people of Greenland, but also for the sake of the national security interests of the United States of America. So our message is very simple. Yes, the people of Greenland are going to have self-determination. We hope that they choose to partner with the United States because we're the only nation on earth that will respect their sovereignty and respect their security, because their security is very much our security, as these brave Americans show.
Okay. They don't want you. Basically is what it comes down to. I'm sure there are some people there who, like here in Canada, would welcome joining the United States. But overall, there's been a fair bit of pushback on this, especially from the government in Greenland. And then I wrote a Substack. Here it is here. I'm just going to share some of this with you. Digging up old U.S. secrets in Greenland. The under-ice nuclear base frosting over Usha Vance's Greenland visit. I wrote this before J.D. Vance came out and said, I can't let Usha have all the fun. I'm going to Greenland too, which doubled the pleasure, doubled the fun with Greenland, and doubled the provocation in the view of some as well. And I said this week, Usha Vance touched on Greenland, and what I do here is I flash back to 1959, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, as I wrote here, is carving a city under the ice at the Greenland's ice sheet, 150 miles east of what is now Patuxent Space Base, which is where they ended up going for this visit. Instead of actually going to populated areas, they kind of stayed away from the general population. They did. I don't think they went to the dog races at all. And I say, this is not some conspiracy theory. Officially, Camp Century. This is an underground base with underground ice tunnels that was constructed back in 1959. And officially, Camp Century was a science outpost drilling ice cores testing Arctic grit. And unofficially, it was the launch pad for Project Iceworm, a wild Cold War scheme to stash 600 nuclear missiles under the ice aimed at Moscow. Powered by a portable nuclear reactor, it boasted tunnels, a hospital, even a chapel, a subterranean marvel spanning 1.2 miles. The catch? Denmark, Greenland's colonial overseer and a NATO ally at the time, didn't know about the missiles. Neither did Greenlanders, who had no voice under Danish rule. The 1951 Greenland Defense Agreement gave the U.S. a foothold, but Project Iceworm pushed it too far. Denmark's nuclear-free stance since 1957 made the plan a betrayal, exposed only decades later in declassified files. By 1967, the ice was winning, tunnels collapsed, and the U.S. bailed, leaving behind 200,000 liters of diesel, 24 million liters of wastewater, and toxic PCBs, which are carcinogenic, cause cancer, assuming the ice would bury it forever. The climate change, because it is getting warmer up there for whatever reasons you can decide, says otherwise. A 2016 study warns that melting could unleash all that toxic junk by the end of this century, a ticking environmental time bomb. And Greenland never signed up for that, never asked for it. It has now become a very, very sensitive issue that has been, pulled back up to the surface because of this talk of taking over Greenland, and now this provocation, if you will, this visit, this diplomatic mission by the Vances to Greenland. So the people there haven't forgotten this, and it has resurfaced as a very serious issue, and it's a sensitive sore point. So tonight I have queued up for you, as part of Maverick Midnight Matinee, a movie about exactly that. We're going to show that to you at the end of this broadcast. It's going to show you all about Camp Century. It was public, like they were aware of it, but they didn't know about the nuclear end of it. So I have a movie about how they built this place, what it took to construct it, and it's pretty fascinating. So if you are into, all these tunnels and things, there's lots of tunnels here. And it's real. It's not a conspiracy theory. It really happened. It's all documented. And I have the film footage to back up what I'm talking about. So Oh, I should put the Substack article, the link, in the video chat. How about that? Yeah, let me go over here, and please consider subscribing to the Substack. Doesn't cost anything. I'm putting it first here in the Rumble chat, so you can learn all about this, the secret U.S. under ice military base established in the 1950s by the U.S. government in Greenland. So there's that. Let me go over here to YouTube. I have to open up the channel separately. I can't post just in the system anymore. It isn't routing through the studio the way they used to. But that's okay. I'm going to find you guys over here. There we go. And how is everybody over there tonight? I'll look in the chat just briefly once I get this open. There it is. Okay, now I'm posting in the main YouTube channel. Halo says USA needs a restart with new players. And Maria says apparently Toronto has lots of tunnels. And hello Brian, how you doing tonight? Why are you not wearing a suit, VP Vance? Tanver says, if USA gets Greenland, Canada is next. Think about it. I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I'm concerned about it. But I am very, very relieved to see that Trump dialed back his rhetoric today. Really, really happy about that. Just so many jobs on the line, right? So however we get that monkey off our back, figuratively speaking, or I guess in this case it's an orange, I never thought about it, an orange orangutan, right? I was thinking about the monkey of the tariffs, but yeah, if we can get this stupid tariff thing behind us and just get rid of this stupidity about annexing the country, then we can just start making decisions without all this outside influence and interference. Let Canadians choose the path forward for Canadians. And even if people want to join the United States, if people want to break the country up, okay, that's a question, though, that should be decided within Canada, among Canadians, not with foreign influence or interference from any other country. Some other countries would love to see Canada broken up. There are a lot of countries around the world, some countries around the world that are in opposition to us that I'm sure they love to see us destabilized, maybe even destroyed. But anyhow, I digress. What else do we have to talk about tonight? Yeah, please consider subscribing. Now, I was going to go to the phones tonight at some point. Maybe we still will. But I want to talk about a couple of issues here. We have, well, first of all, the FCC, that's the Federal Communications Commission, investigating Disney. This is, you talk about free speech and censorship, get rid of, it's really, it's swung back, too far the other way. FCC investigating Disney and ABC for DEI initiatives. So you have, here's the NBC report on this. The Federal Communications Commission has alerted Walt Disney Company and its ABC unit that it will begin an investigation into diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts at the media giant. The FCC, the agency that regulates the media and telecommunications industry, said in a letter dated Friday that it wants to ensure that Disney and ABC have not been violating FCC equal employment opportunity regulations by promoting invidious forms of DEI discrimination. Quote, we are reviewing the Federal Communications Commission's letter, and we look forward to engaging with the Commission to answer its questions, a Disney spokesperson told CNBC. And Disney seen as, one of the more woke media companies, and ABC as well, certainly prior to Trump coming back into office, often cited by people on the conservative / Republican / MAGA side. Ron DeSantis, in many respects, going to war with Disney in Florida, the state where woke goes to die, according to DeSantis. But you're putting these companies right, like it serves them right in a lot of ways because they're following the politics, whether it's Bud Light or Disney or Gillette or whomever. I've been saying for a long time these companies should focus on their products and not the politics, because it kind of comes around and bites people in the butt. But when government gets so involved that they start dictating corporate policy on cultural grounds, you get into trouble no matter what you do. And that's the case here, I think, with Disney, because Disney, following government guidelines on DEI hiring practices, like a lot of big companies, a lot of corporations, right? Of course. So when you have the Democrats in power and DEI is in vogue, you are following the trend. You're on the DEI train. And then along comes Trump and destroys all that. Now you've got an investigation on your hands. What DEI is, right? Oh, we lost our video. That was strange. We're still here though. Okay. So yeah, maybe you can't win for losing, and you can't lose. Like you can't. One minute you're trying to please this government, the next minute you're trying to please that government. I'm not so sure I should be making excuses for Disney on this front. I'm just saying that the political pendulum is swinging pretty extreme these days from one side to the other, and if you're just trying to run a business, it's pretty easy to get caught in the middle and smacked by that pendulum as it swings by you. Here's another example of, I would call this the new form of political correctness. Things going too far? Look at this. Have you heard about the bill in Arkansas? This proposed law that would make some haircuts illegal? Here it is right here. If we do a call-in, I'd like to get your thoughts on this tonight. Here it is right here. GOP bill GOP proposes bill that would punish supporting trans youth through new names and haircuts. Haircuts! So they proposed a bill that would allow lawsuits against people who support transgender youth's social transitions, including, this is the part that I think goes too far, including by using their preferred name or pronouns, or by giving them a gender non-conforming haircut. HB 1668, the so-called Vulnerable Youth Protection Act, would allow minors or their parents to sue anyone who even acknowledges a minor's gender identity, including, without limitation, changes in clothing, pronouns, hairstyle, and name. Lawsuits are permitted up to 15 years after the alleged conduct, with damages of $10,000 or up to $10 million if they have received gender-affirming care. Wow. So here, here it says, the bill falsely equates gender-affirming care with, quote, castration, sterilization, or mutilation. The American Medical Association, the American Psychiatric Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American blah, 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 blah. It says, all agree that gender-affirming care is evidence-based and medically necessary, not just for adults but minors as well. But here's the rub, okay? It's this part here about the haircuts and the clothing. The American Civil Liberties Union of Arkansas strongly denounced the social transition bill in a statement asserting that it, quote, fosters a climate of fear where doctors, teachers, and even parents risk financial ruin simply for supporting transgender youth, and that it is a blatant overreach of government power attempting to control private decisions and to circumvent our constitutional rights, including free speech, religious exercise, due process, and equal protection. These cases would be extremely unlikely to hold up in court, it says, but the bill's intent is to scare people into silence and deter them from providing respect, dignity, and care to LGBTQ youth. The group wrote, the ACLU of Arkansas strongly opposes HB 1668, a cruel and unconstitutional attack on transgender youth, their families, and medical professionals. But look, it's about the haircuts and the clothing. So if you get the wrong kind of haircut for your child, they can accuse you, if it's not government approved, you can be charged under this act if it's approved as a law. You could be fined $10,000 to $10 million, and up to 15 years after the fact, because of a haircut. Now, do you think back? In the 1970s, long hair was kind of in style. I was a kid growing up, and I had long hair like all the kids in the 70s, right? Disco era. Do you like my Trump dance? So if you have long, just by having, someone could come along, say, look, you let your son grow long hair. You're trying to turn him gay or whatever they might think. I don't know. It just seems, or if you let your daughter wear jeans and T-shirts instead of dresses, would that constitute the improper gender-bending clothing, so that you would be accused even 15 years after the fact of dressing your daughter improperly, and you could be charged because your daughter at the time was going through a tomboy phase or something? I don't know. Legislating haircuts and clothing for kids? This gets onto a very slippery slope. It is about free expression. It's about freedom of speech. It's about freedom in general. And who decides something like that? Yeah, I don't know where you draw the line on this one, man. Well, I think I do. Just don't pass that law. And then people are up here right now and they're going, I just watched, one of these meetings out in Alberta, and some of the media surrounding the separatist movement out there, and people are being told, oh, if we split away from Canada, you're going to have so much more freedom if you join the USA. What a lie. There's no more freedom in the USA. Right now, I would say there's a lot less in the US than there is in Canada. Just because of stuff like that. There are a lot of things that are wrong in the U.S. right now. And the Trump administration is doing an end run around people's rights in a lot of different ways. And people are cheering for it largely because they're not. Somehow they're blind to the fact that your rights are under assault down there right now. And there is all this corruption. And it's right in the Trump White House. It's right there with Elon Musk. Huge conflict of interest there. And Trump has given him permission, essentially, the owner of this big media company, to go in and start going through people's personal data. He has access to just about, personal information, data on virtually every U.S. citizen now. As they go through, and what are they doing? They're going through email records, text messages of government employees to determine if they are in alignment with the government ideologically, and if they're not, you're gone, fired, lost your job, as they purge government of political opposition through Doge under the guise of, efficiency, when in fact it really is the Department of Getting Even. That is absolutely true. And I see that even yesterday, RFK Jr. came out and acknowledged that Health and Homeland Services is going to purge its staff as well under his watch. So he's going in and he's going to take a flamethrower to the staff list. I think they're going to hack at least 25% of the people out of their administration under, again, the guise of efficiency. But it will be to get rid of, no doubt, and there has been some acknowledgement of this, to get rid of people that just stand in opposition to the president's agenda, or in this case, maybe RFK Jr.'s agenda, to reshape health policy in the United States in a pretty dramatic way. Agree or disagree? If you disagree, though, you're out. It's their way or the highway. And I'll tell you right now, with the way things are going down there, it's absolutely authoritarian. That's why a lot of countries have issued travel bans down there. You're seeing something really out of place. Look at the way Canadians are being treated. Look at the attitude, even on Fox News, toward Canada. The contempt, the arrogance, the lack of respect. And I'm so, again, relieved to see that Trump has changed his tone as of today. It's just about respect. Respecting our sovereignty. We are a sovereign nation. Some people don't like that. So, yeah, there's a lot going on there. We'll get into maybe more of, the separatist movement out in Alberta another night. I'm not going to dig into it too much here this evening. I don't think we really have too much time, but you all know what's going on out there anyway. I don't like when I hear things like, though, if you don't vote conservative, this whole country's going to fly apart. Whoa. Wow. And then people are like, Chinese infiltration, no, U.S. Right over there, right there. China's a problem too, but the bigger problem is right there. But it's because we're so used to having the United States just there, because we're so integrated through business and culture at different levels and in different ways across Canada. We don't see it. We don't see the threat, because in our lifetimes, for generations, the United States has just been a neighbor and an ally and a friend and somebody that we can work with, align with, right? Well, things have changed. That's why Carney yesterday said the old relationship is done. And it is. Another wake-up call for Donald Trump. And that's the other thing. The United States, yeah, they're huge, 10 times our size in terms of population. 100, maybe 1,000 times bigger in terms of the economy, because they have the world reserve currency. The U.S. Economy is really global in scope. It's not just national. Trump is trying to shrink it down. But when people say that Canada doesn't stand a chance because they're so much bigger, no, we absolutely stand a chance. We are actually a very good footing as we defend ourselves against these tariffs, because the bigger you are, the harder you might fall. And you have to understand, too, that the bigger an operation is, if you're looking at a big company, they have big problems, big overhead. The United States has massive overhead. Do you think they can really afford to lose their auto industry because Trump gets it wrong? No. They can't afford that. You've heard Elon Musk talking about how the United States is on the verge of going bankrupt as they sit. No wonder they want to take over Canada. They want our resources. So people are like, well, they're so much bigger, you don't stand a chance. Oh, yes, you do. If they get it wrong, if we defend ourselves, if this trade war hurts them in any way, they're kind of in a lot of trouble. Look, General Motors used to be, well, it still is, but it was at one time the biggest auto company in the world, one of the biggest corporations in the world, period, and it went bankrupt. It had to have a government bailout because it's huge. The bigger you are, the more you need to sustain things. Sears department stores. huge retailer in the United States went bankrupt. And it comes along and it doesn't happen, and then bam, right? Like there's no Sears stores here in Canada anymore. They're all went bankrupt up here. Hudson Bay Company, huge retailer, just filed for bankruptcy. Big doesn't mean impossible to compete with, because the bigger you are, the more inefficiencies you have, the more people you have that you have to take care of who don't actually produce, because you've got a lot of waste. You have a lot of people lollygagging and not really producing and just collecting a paycheck and hiding in a corner over there that you're not aware of. You have people on on welfare that, they're milking the system and you haven't caught them yet. You have all kinds of, in this case, foreign governments, we're out raiding the piggy bank in ways that nobody is aware of. You have to support this massive military industrial architecture all around the world. That's extremely expensive. If you undermine the economy, like in any way, you just take away a portion of that, and the whole house of cards can come falling down. No, you can't. This whole thing with the auto industry, I'm telling you, that's why you're getting the change in tone. It's because we took a strong stand against it, and then we have the wake-up call where the auto industry executives told him, you can't do this. And then you had the economist that he gave the award to, the Medal of Freedom Award in 2019, going back and telling him in this report as well, you can't do this. This is stupid. Dumbest trade war ever, as reported in that op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. And then I said it too, because it's right, it's true, it's the dumbest trade war ever. It's not about size, it's about strategy. Back to the non-gender affirming or non-conforming haircuts. There's a lot of reaction to this. What do you guys think? Look in the chat. I have to see if I can fix this screen. There we go. Okay. Bring this over. This is the Ring of Fire podcast reacting to the haircut issue. I'm sorry, but when the government starts telling you what kind of haircut you can or can't have, and deciding whether it's gender non-conforming and therefore you might get charged, that's government overreach. That's not more freedom. That's less freedom. That's authoritarianism. Canadians, think twice before you vote in a referendum or support the idea of joining the US of A, because there's no more freedom down there. They had the same problems during the pandemic. They had lockdowns down there too. They also had vaccine mandates, and now they have this.
Well, folks, welcome to the United States of North Korea, as Republicans in the state of Arkansas are seeking to ban certain haircuts based on your gender. Specifically, if you go to a hairdresser and you request a gender non-conforming haircut, basically a haircut that does not traditionally correspond with the gender you were assigned at birth, that hairdresser is about to have their entire life destroyed under this new piece of legislation. Now, here's what's happening. A year ago, maybe 2 years ago, the state of Arkansas passed a complete and total ban on gender-confirming care. That ban was struck down. So the state of Arkansas was told, you cannot legislate this. You cannot ban legally gender-affirming care. So Republicans that control the state House, state Senate, governorship with Sarah Huckabee Sanders, they decided to come up with a more clever way. Okay, if we can't make it illegal, then we're going to put forth new legislation that basically allows us to sue anyone that affirms a youth, gender identity. We can sue you for up to $10 million. Now, the average hairdresser out there who's giving these haircuts doesn't have $10 million. Neither does the average teacher out there who uses a child's preferred pronouns. But both of those individuals, under this new piece of legislation that has been proposed, could be sued for $10 million for doing that. Here is HB 1668, State of Arkansas. Weaponizes civil enforcement by permitting lawsuits against any person who supports trans young people by providing or helping to receive gender-affirming care or by affirming young people in their transition. Minors or their parents can sue for minimum damages of $10,000 and up to $10 million in punitive damages for certain forms of medical care. The bill also allows Arkansas parents to sue people or medical providers outside of the state who help Arkansas youth access gender-affirming care. The bill defines social transitioning as, quote, any act by which a minor adopts or espouses a gender identity that differs from the minor's biological sex, including, without limitation, changes in clothing, pronouns, hairstyle, and, of course, name. So again, if a teacher in Arkansas has a student, they say, hey, my pronouns are now, she, her, and the teacher uses those pronouns, minimum $10,000, maximum $10 million lawsuit right there. Hairdresser, young child, maybe 16 because that's still a minor, goes into the hairdresser, says, hey, listen, I am transitioning. I would like a more appropriate haircut for my gender. Hairdresser says, yeah, no problem. Whatever. You're paying me. Sure, I'll do it. You've requested this. Minimum $10,000 lawsuit, maximum $10 million in punitive. Just because they did what somebody asked them to do. And here's the kicker. This is what Republicans in Arkansas are focusing on, right? We got to make sure that the boys ain't getting the girls' haircuts and the girls ain't getting the boys' haircuts. That's the priority in Arkansas. Arkansas is 47th in the country in education. Arkansas is 48th in healthcare. They have the 7th highest poverty rate in the nation, and they have the highest maternal mortality rate in the country. The highest. You want to talk about protecting kids? How about you work on your healthcare system to where mommy doesn't die while giving birth to the kid? That's going to cause far more damage than a temporary haircut. But no. Y'all just keep living in poverty, keep screwing people over, having one of the highest overall mortality rates in the country. Let your people die while living in squalor, so that you can sit in your ivory palace in your state legislature and regulate haircuts. Thanks for watching.
Okay. So, there's an opinion. What's yours? I'm going to look in the chat. Lindy, totally agree. Good grief. Yeah, just haircuts. What rights do you have, Rick? Yeah, we've got rights, Spinnaker. Yeah, okay, Crickshank. I got TDS. Whatever. What else do we have in here? The lovely one. Don't agree with the delivery of Trump in anything or tariffs and 51st state. Hopefully things will change and liberals won't have massive control on policies anymore. And, oh yeah, Lindy says she misses Sears. I miss Sears too. I actually do. They had some good stuff. Best refrigerator ever owned. Kenmore. Yeah, they had good appliances, parts. Yeah, it was just good stuff. Good company. Was a good company. They lost their way. They just weren't competitive on pricing. Oh, well, times change. Now you can go to Canadian Tire and buy all your stuff from China. China Tire from China. Yeah, Elon Musk acquired X. Well, he bought Twitter, renamed it to X. Now he just sold Twitter. Did you know that? Yeah, he sold. Twitter has been sold, or X has been sold. Who bought it? Elon Musk. when you're so rich that you buy a company worth like over $30 billion and then you sell it and buy it from yourself. You're so rich you can buy and sell your own stuff because you own so many big companies. Here it is here. Elon Musk's AI startup acquires X in deal that values social media platform at $33 billion. He said today that his AI startup XAI had acquired his social media platform X. He just bought the darn thing. Musk said that the deal was an all-stock transaction that valued X at $33 billion. XAI and X's futures, he says, are intertwined today. We officially take the step to combine the data models, compute, distribution, and talent. X recently raised $1 billion from investors, valuing it at $44 billion, according to Bloomberg. Musk then took X private in 2022 at nearly the same valuation. So he's basically sold the company to one of his other companies, an AI, XAI, and of course they're related companies in terms of technology and activity. So I guess it sort of probably makes sense to just shift the ownership in some way. But why do I get the feeling that there's some sort of a tax break going on there? Must be. And I've never, ever, ever... Oh, before I get into this, war heroes in a gay plane are among images flagged for DEI. This is related to the haircut story. To just show how this is a new form of political correctness and cancel culture coming from the Trump administration. Pete Hegseth, Department of Defense. War heroes in a gay plane are among images flagged for removal in Pentagon's DEI purge. Like they're literally targeting photographs in government archives like the Enola Gay. That's the bomber that dropped the atomic bomb on Japan. The Boeing B-29 named the Enola Gay is seen on Tinian in the Marianas Islands. There's a photograph of it because it says gay on the side. It's one of, I guess, a huge number of photographs that have been, 26,000 images flagged for removal across every military branch in their archives. Could end up purging as many as 100,000 images or posts in total. And they're going after images of women, people of different minority groups, trying to, I guess, shift the focus or the focus of the historical narrative that is archived and shared and shown and taught and preserved in these government institutions. So a bunch of these photographs being taken out, and it seems to me, again, it's just going too far because they're targeting a picture of the Enola Gay because it says gay on it. Somebody's just a little bit insecure, I would say. It's going to be okay. You don't have to purge all the photos. It's not. You're going to be all right. And while all that's going on, back to, Elon Musk, I think tomorrow is Tesla takedown day. Here's what's going on with that. Because even a lot of, Elon Musk's political opponents, people upset with the authoritarian reach that we're seeing from the Trump administration. A lot of people upset. Here it is. Tesla takedown, a peaceful protest movement. Sell your Teslas, dump your stocks, stop Musk now. Join us, get involved. Yeah, the Global Day of Protest, March 29th. Now, they're not asking people to burn Teslas. This is supposed to be a peaceful protest, but I just took note of it. It has been popping up in my social media feeds just a little bit, so I became aware of it. And Rick Wilson, Lincoln Project, one time big Republican supporter. Of course, he has shifted gears because he does not like Trump at all. And he's one of the people involved in this. And in fact, now here's the kicker for you guys. You think that Trump and Musk are all about free speech? Nuh-uh. Not really. Because over on X, Rick Wilson had his account banned. Oh yeah, because Rick Wilson has been very critical of Elon Musk. Very critical of Elon Musk. And because they have this Tesla takedown campaign, Elon Musk didn't like it, so he banned Rick Wilson from Twitter. Yeah, that was about a week ago or so. But he ain't giving up. So if you think that Trump has ushered in a new era, a new golden era of freedom, think again and think about what country you really want to belong to.
Hey everybody, it's Friday, March the 28th.
Here's
it is late in the day here in Tallahassee, Florida. It is absolutely beautiful spring day. And tomorrow looks like another beautiful day because tomorrow is the day of Tesla takedown. Tomorrow across the country, people are going to peacefully protest at Tesla dealerships to make sure that people thinking about buying one of Elon Musk's douchepanzers understand that America knows that's where his money comes from. That's where the trouble he's able to cause us comes from. And folks are going to go out tomorrow and, like I said, peacefully protest. You can go to TeslaTakedown.com and enter your zip code. You'll find out what the closest Tesla dealership to you is. And again, these are peaceful protests. As Americans with First Amendment rights are all endowed with, we are allowed to do this. I'm sorry, Pam Bondi, that you apparently went to some sort of low-rent law school / veterinary college and don't understand the First Amendment, but the DOJ cannot stop peaceful protesters at Tesla or anywhere. It's our right as Americans. It's the most patriotic thing you can do is to express your opinion. So go to TeslaTakedown.com, put in your zip code, show up tomorrow, and peacefully protest. And if you see the folks outside the Tesla dealership and you're driving by, give them a thumbs up, give them a horn. It's a way to show people where you stand on Elon Musk and on what he's doing to this country and the damage and the harm he's causing. Anyway, folks, have a great weekend, and I will talk to you again soon. Thanks.
Okay, that was Rick Wilson. Tesla takedown day tomorrow. We'll have an eye on that and find out what happens. I'm not sure I'm going to be on tomorrow because I have a family commitment. I'll try to maybe be here, but I'm going to be pretty busy tomorrow. So if I don't show up, it's because I'm doing family stuff. It's actually birthday party for my son and my dad. Both born same day, April 1. They're a couple of fools. And I ain't fooling. It's true. Now, tomorrow's not April the 1st, but we're going to have a birthday thingy tomorrow for the two of them, so I may not be here. See how the day goes. But it's just not right. Just the day doesn't feel right when I'm not spending the evening with you guys. So I'll try to be here. If I'm not, at least I'll be here in spirit. What else do we have going on here? We're just about to the end of the crazy stuff today, but I will show you this. Since Tesla takedown day is tomorrow, and people are very concerned about these very unorthodox and unusual economic policies rolling out from the White House and Donald Trump. Look at what's going on here today with the markets. Oh yeah, they're crashing. Markets tanked today as data showed core inflation rose more than forecast and consumer sentiment slumped to a 12-year low amid tariff worries. For the week, the Dow lost 1%, Standard & Poor 500 slid 1.5%, and the NASDAQ fell 2.6%. Dow drops more than 700 points as stocks close lower. Book weekly losses. Donald. Hello, Donald Trump. Are you paying attention? I hope so, and I hope you manage to pivot back. Get on track, Jack. Again, let's get this economy humming instead of clunking along. Now, I told you about Camp Century. Yes, I did. And what we're going to do is, for this special edition of Maverick Midnight Matinee, instead of signing off and coming back on later, we're just going to continue on here on the Maverick News Channel tonight, and we're just going to segue right into this evening's Maverick Midnight Matinee program. We're not going to wait for the hour. What I've got lined up is this government-made documentary from the 1950s. I believe it's 1957. No, sorry, 1964 is when it was published. That's a little ambiguous for me because I'm checking the date here. Anyway, they selected this site in 1959. I can't remember the date when this film was produced, but it shows this whole operation, how they created Camp Century, this under ice military base in Greenland back in the 1950s, as the Cold War was just getting underway. After World War II, the United States, this dominant military power, nuclear power, and as I said, it was supposed to be like a scientific weather research station. In reality, they had a nuclear reactor in there, and they had a plan to put 600 nuclear bombs in there. So we're gonna show you this. Then I've got another really good movie, also from kind of that era, called The Beginning of the End. So this is a short little documentary. Let's get to that here tonight. But as I get things queued up, I will leave you this evening with... Hang on, here we go. Let's bring this back. Just in honor of the 47th President of the United States of America, again from Politics. Here it is. It's just, yeah, I think it's funny. I think it's hilarious. Hang on a second, John's on the line. Hang on a second, John. Hang on just a second, my friend. I have to, I lost my tab. There it is. Okay. I still had the orange orangutan making the funny noises in my ear. Are you calling because of that video, John?
I am there, Rimby John. Yeah. Just, you gotta close the show with the orange orangutan. Okay. Is that not an orange orangutan, my friend?
I think somebody said that to me today, and I was just laughing all afternoon. I had to share
you're ahead of the curve, my friend. I'll be on real quick. On a side note, Rickster, please give all our love from Alberta to a pre-happy birthday to your son and your dad.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
That is really special, eh?
Yes.
The same day, bro.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And April Fool's Day. a blessing and a curse at the same time.
Well, I think, my dad died. He was only 67. You're a very fortunate man. You have your mom and your dad. And they're such beautiful people, Rickster. Please treasure them. Give your dad and your son lots of love from Alberta, my friend. Please.
I'll do that. Okay, John, let's sign off with the orange orangutan. And I'll let you do the honors here. We'll see you back here with Maverick Midnight Matinee in just a few minutes on the other side of the orange orangutan sun. On the
flip side, Maverick News family worldwide. Love you guys. Bye-bye.
Monkey see, monkey do. Vladimir Putin's making a fool out of you. Once a deal maker, now just a shouter. Used to shake hands, now it's all about power. You turn your back on your friends and your allies too. You betrayed the spirit of the red, white, and blue. Oh, orange orangutan man, swinging through the world with a heavy hand. Tearing up treaties, slapping on tariffs, throwing tantrums like a billionaire sheriff. Dial it down, don't stop it, man, you beast, you critter. Orange orangutan man. Donald Trump 1.0 had a plan. Now Donald J. Trump 2.0's a wrecking man. Used to make deals, now you just sneer. Ruling through fear, grinning ear to ear. Canada's not for sale, Greenland ain't yours. Gaza's not a playground, quit making wars. Bluffing and puffing with the wig on tight. Acting like a boss, but you lost the fight. The art of the deal, man, that ship sunk. Now it's all about rage and a nuclear funk. Orange orangutan man, swinging through the world with a heavy hand. Tearing up treaties, slapping on tariffs, throwing tantrums like a billionaire sheriff. Dial it down, don't stop it, man, you beast, you critter. Orange orangutan man. You're fired. No, you're just bananas.
On the top of the world, below the surface of a giant ice cap, a city is buried. Today on the island of Greenland, as part of man's continuing efforts to master the secrets of survival in the Arctic, the United States Army has established an unprecedented nuclear-powered Arctic Research Center. Located in a wilderness of ice and snow, Camp Century is 150 miles from Thule, its nearest base of supply. This is an ideal Arctic laboratory. For more than 90% of Greenland is permanently frozen under a polar ice cap which covers all but a few coastal areas of the island. Camp Century is buried below the surface of this ice cap. Beneath it, the ice descends for 6,000 feet. In this remote setting, less than 800 miles from the North Pole, Camp Century is a symbol of man's unceasing struggle to conquer his environment, to increase his ability to live and fight if necessary under polar conditions. This is the story of Camp Century, the city under ice. It was in May 1959, after more than a year of preparation, that a small party of Army engineers conducted the final search to select a site for Camp Century. Listen now to the voice of Captain Tom Evans, the young officer who was in charge of the construction of the camp.
This was the day we really got underway. Colonel Kerkering, commanding officer of the United States Army Polar Research and Development Center, was with me when we made the final reconnaissance. We needed a flat surface, a level with less than 1 degree of slope. This would minimize construction problems by enabling us to keep all of our tunnels on the same level. We finally picked this plateau, a smooth white plain of ice for as far as you could see. This was the closest location to Thule, our supply base, which would not be affected by the summer thaw. That first day, we set out flags marking the boundaries of the camp. This is rugged country. Nothing lived on the ice cap. Not even seal or caribou survived in this climate. Our job was to cross 150 miles of ice, much of it split by crevasses, and then build a city under the ice, experimenting with new concepts of polar construction. It was several weeks later, at a point where the ice cap sloped down to a narrow strip of barren land along the coast, that our supplies began rolling in by truck for transfer to sleds. To make this transfer possible, we'd had to build a 3-mile road up onto the edge of the ice cap. We brought in everything this way. Construction materials, steel arches, clothing, nails, steel beams, prefabricated houses, lumber, food, even ice cream. In the months it took to build Camp Century, more than 6,000 tons of supplies were used. Even the vehicles we used at the site had to be transported over the ice on big bobsleds. We called these convoys of 10 and 20-ton sleds heavy swings. Crawling up the ice cap at approximately 2 miles an hour, a heavy swing would reach the camp in about 70 hours if everything went well. We used wooden caboose-like trailers, wanigans, to house members of the construction crews for the 3-day trip. Mukluk, a 3-month-old Eskimo sled dog, went along as camp mascot, strictly against regulations. Caterpillar tractors with extra-wide treads pulled the heavy swings. Each tractor could pull from 50 to 100 tons. Finally, like a wagon train in the Old West, the first heavy swing got underway. At the same time, we used another type of smaller vehicle to transport an advance party. These polecats would average 10 miles an hour and make the trip in little more than half a day. A convoy of polecats, each section carrying 6 men, was called a light swing. We also used light aircraft. Throughout the operation, these flights brought in key personnel, special cargoes, and mail. We couldn't forget anything. This wasn't country in which to turn around and go back. A compass was useless this close to the pole. Instead, our convoys followed a series of trail markers. Traveling in a Wanigan was a long way from the early tractor trains of the 30s with sourdough biscuits and warmed-up beans. From the days spent loading the heavy swing, the men's faces were already deeply sunburned. During the trip, in shifts, half the men rode and half slept. Navy-type bunks were used for sleeping, if you could sleep in the 24-hour sunlight. First to arrive at the surface work camp were the aircraft. A few hours later, the polecats pulled in. For the next several months, this primitive scene of crowded James Way Arctic huts with outdoor latrines was our home. Now the real job began. Altogether, I had 4 other officers and a hand-picked group of 11 non-commissioned officers to help supervise the military construction crew of Camp Century. Plans for the camp had been developed months in advance. The basic concept was simple. A system of 23 trenches would be dug into the ice cap and then covered with steel arches and snow. Branching off the main communication trench would be a series of lateral trenches housing complete research, laboratory, and test facilities. We got to work immediately cutting trenches. This snow milling machine, the Peter Plow, was our pride and joy. Manufactured in Switzerland, it could handle up to 1,200 cubic yards of snow an hour. Designed to clear roads in the Alps, it was ideal for our purpose, being capable of making extremely precise cuts. It was usually operated by 2 men, one controlling the machine's horizontal movement, the other controlling its vertical movement and speed. When a trench was several feet deep, planks were put down on the shoulders of the cut. Later on, these planks would be used to support the steel arch roof which would cover the trench. Camp Century was starting to grow, and so was Muckluck. We used 3 Peter plows to cut all the different trenches we needed. By making a series of undercuts, the width of most of the lateral trenches was greater at the bottom than at the top. This cut down on the amount of roofing material required. Before long, the first roofs began to go into place. Constructed of overlapping steel arches, these roofs could be put up very quickly. By this time, we had a crew working in a snow quarry, cutting large bricks of snow. In this way, we made maximum use of the materials available at the site. Somehow, Muckluck seemed to be everywhere, always making himself useful. When a roof of steel arches was in place, it was covered with snow. Because it had been milled, this snow would harden into an extremely durable surface. Inside each tunnel, at the end adjoining the main communication tunnel, passages were cut through. Not all the excavation could be done by machine. The shovel was still a very useful tool. Next, work began on foundations for the prefabricated buildings that would be placed within the tunnels. Leveling the floor was very important to provide a good bearing for the foundations and prevent any building from settling unevenly. This was cold work. The temperature within these tunnels sometimes went to 20 degrees below zero, and this was summer. Prefabricated sections were delivered by forklift. The non-conductive wood and the air insulation barrier below it protected both the building from the cold of the ice floor and the ice floor from the warmth of the building. Every prefab that went into Camp Century had been pre-erected, tested, and then shipped to us as a unit. Every clip, every doorknob, every light switch came in a single shipment. In this way, we knew there would be no delays caused by missing parts. This is a standard T5 Engineer Arctic building, designed for cold weather use. Composed of plywood insulation panels, these buildings would provide space for comfortable working and living under the ice. Since every unit had been checked out in advance, our crews could put up one of these buildings in less than a day. As soon as the shell was completed, crews began to wire the buildings for interim power provided by diesel generators. As each unit was finished, I marked it off on the chart on my office wall. As the major interior work within each tunnel was completed, the entranceway was blocked up with bricks of snow. It took about 2 days to build one of these walls. Once in place, these bricks would bond together into a solid wall, and only a small entranceway would be left. We then used a bulldozer to push loose snow into the doorway of the tunnel to complete the seal. Later, an escape hatch would be placed at the end of a small wooden form for an emergency exit. When it was completed, the entrance was weatherproof and serviceable. Throughout the long period of construction, within the primitive facilities of the work camp, the men solved the everyday problems of working and living as best they could. Meanwhile, work had begun on the 4 nuclear trenches. These were the widest and deepest trenches and did not use the undercutting principle. On this cut, we used 3 plows simultaneously.
The best, the
2
only
plows
barbershop.
throwing up snow from below, the third cutting a spoil trench up above to prevent loose snow from sliding back into the cut. To avoid melting caused by the sun, much of this work was done at night. These scenes were filmed at 2 a.m.
Those are pretty wicked snowblowers.
The continuous sunlight caused us plenty of headaches. A black tarpaulin was used to protect the section of this 40-foot cut most vulnerable to the sun's rays. Below, foundations and structure for the reactor building were put in place. Until the trench was covered, there was always a threat that the 40-foot arches would collapse a shoulder already weakened by the 24-hour-a-day Arctic sunlight. The faster the roof went up, the better. The frame for the reactor building was made of steel beams. Despite the cold and the constant winds, my construction workers climbed like monkeys over the scaffolding and rode the beams into place. At this same time, within the tunnels already completed, we were installing piping for water and electricity. Heavy insulation material was wrapped around every pipe to protect against the extreme cold. A copper heating element inside the insulation kept water lines from freezing. Flexible sewage lines also had to be run through the camp. At this time, to keep on schedule, we were using 12 and sometimes 14-hour shifts. For like any modern city, Camp Century required a complex of interconnecting corridors carrying a maze of piping of all sizes and shapes. One of our proudest achievements was our solution of the water problem. A steam hose with a special drilling nozzle was used to melt a hole 3.5 feet in diameter, 120 feet down into the ice cap, until a pool of water formed, which did not drain off. This pool provided 10,000 gallons of fresh water daily. Throughout the camp, an extensive electrical system was now installed. For electrical heating would not only be clean, but it would also reduce the threat of fire. And fire was the worst hazard under the ice. From the very beginning, we had to take precautions against fire, or a storm closing the ramps, or any other disaster which might block the regular entrances to the camp. 16 of these escape hatches were strategically located throughout the various tunnels. In their off-duty hours, the men did what they could to amuse themselves with the recreational opportunities at hand. Bronco busting was one favorite pastime. By this time, muckluck was almost full grown. Living in the work camp was pretty much a do-it-yourself operation. Everything took longer and time was always short. Since our crews were working around the clock, if a problem came up, it couldn't wait. We tried to resolve it immediately. By early July, most of the heavy construction work on the tunnels was completed. Throughout this operation, it was a steady stream of heavy swings moving back and forth across the ice, more than any other single factor that made it possible for us to complete Camp Century on schedule. 25,000 gallons of diesel fuel, 110 tons, an all-time record sled load. The continuous flow of tractor trains bringing in enormous cargoes were like the dependable tortoise, slow but steady. But they were our lifeline. To service our many vehicles, a maintenance shop was constructed closer to the surface, both as a repair shop and as a garage. For the sub-zero temperatures meant equipment had to be kept warm. Otherwise, engines wouldn't start, lubricating oil solidified, and electrical connections froze. It was at this time that the Marine Fiddler arrived at Thule with the nuclear power plant. Designed for air transportability but transported by sea to reduce costs, the nuclear plant was the last major phase of our operation and the most difficult. This unit, for example, part of a vapor container, weighed more than 21 tons.
Okay, and I have to dump off YouTube. So please go to Rumble to finish watching tonight's Maverick Midnight
These packages were delivered to the ice cap over a road built specifically for their transport.
I put the link in the chat.
More than 400 tons of piping and machinery arrived in this one shipment. Since the Arctic cold makes metal very brittle, each unit had to be handled with great care. Even a routine impact could cause metal to crack or break. Both Colonel Kirkering and the swing commander checked the loading. The vapor container, the largest single item in the power plant, was carried on a special flat-bottom sled built expressly for its transport. Everything seemed fine the morning the heavy swing moved out. But unfortunately, it was only a few hours later that one of the worst storms of the season blew up. To complete preparations to receive the nuclear plant, my crews bundled up and kept on working. The opening in the roof of the main nuclear trench now had to be closed quickly before the trench began filling with snow. Despite the storm, the heavy swing was still moving. At our end, my crews kept working. It was the only way we could be ready. Out on the ice, the storm cleared a little, and notwithstanding the tremendous load and the weather, this swing made the trip in record time. Just as the swing arrived at the camp, the storm let up entirely. Work began immediately unloading the shipment in preparation for its emplacement. Covers were removed, crates opened. None of the excitement affected Muckluck in the least. Boxes of piping and wiring, each item carefully labeled, were opened so that each unit would be available when needed. Major components shipped in pieces because of weight limitations were reassembled before being moved into the trenches. The condenser, 15 tons of steel, was one of the first units to be moved into the tunnel, prepared to house it. When the condenser was slowly winched forward, small track rollers supported its entire weight. Next, still mounted on its special sled, the vapor container was eased down the ramp by 3 tractors, one in front pulling and 2 in back to keep it from slipping. To bear the weight of the vapor container, the reactor building was constructed around a framework of steel beams. The floor was of heavy planking mounted on other steel beams. We had to use hand rigging methods, the best we could do under the confined conditions, to put the nuclear equipment in place. Every step had to be checked very carefully, since the power plant had been pre-fitted in the United States and must be emplaced within a tolerance of 1/8 of an inch. The power plant consisted of 4 basic elements: a nuclear heat source, equipment that would convert the heat energy into electrical energy, and a system to dispose of excess heat, all regulated by an extensive network of instruments and controls. The last buildings to be assembled were those that would contain the nuclear sections. These shells were built around the nuclear system equipment only after every major component had been put in place. The next phase was to be the activation of the nuclear power plant. Wearing the white safety hat is Captain Jim Barnett, in charge of this operation, who will tell you about this critical phase.
We took every precaution in the book, and some that weren't there, to make sure this would work right the first time. When the entire system had been carefully tested, it was put into operation. We were then ready to begin loading the reactor core. One by one, the fuel elements were removed from the barrels in which they'd been shipped, carefully separated from one another. Each of these bars, containing approximately 500 grams of uranium-235, was then unwrapped, inspected, and wiped clean of any dust. Crewmen wearing protective clothing began to load the fuel elements into a fuel storage tank. This preliminary test proved that the fuel elements, when assembled, would not go active prematurely. After each element was in place, instruments were read and an evaluation of reactivity was made and reported over loudspeakers. The crewmen were protected by a shield of approximately 8 feet of water as they lowered the fuel elements into the fuel storage tank. Later, each of these steel and uranium bars would be transferred underwater to the nearby reactor core. Every step of the testing was meticulously monitored and regular announcements made to the workers assigned to the loading crew.
Total U-235 content of the assembled core is 13.376 kilograms. Coefficient of reactivity, 0.935. The assembly is still subcritical.
When all preliminary tests were completed, we began to transfer the fuel elements one by one and started loading the reactor core. As each fuel element went into place, the count rate of neutrons released gradually increased. Within the core, to prevent the reactor from inadvertently going critical, control rods were in place. This gradual activation of the pile took almost 9 hours. In this tense atmosphere, we changed crews twice. Above us, it was dark and miserable. With the approach of winter, the sun was preparing to set for the year. Finally, our meters reported a significant increase of reactivity. The whole camp was standing by, waiting, tense. By the 9th hour, the last fuel element had gone into place. A plot showed the location of every bar. Then the control rods were gradually withdrawn until the reactor went critical at 6:52 a.m.
Now here it is. With all 5 control rods withdrawn 6.24 inches, PM 2A went critical at 0652 hours.
Within the next few weeks, the final touches were put to Camp Century. Today, powered by its nuclear reactor, this unique installation is a completely modern community deep under the ice. This is a far cry from the primitive Jamesway huts of the work camp, where 3 showers served 250 men. Here, there are showers for all and facilities for every modern convenience. Among the many sophisticated facilities at Camp Century is the dispensary, complete in every detail. For while the remote research community is isolated by 150 miles of ice and snow, its medical capabilities can cope with almost any emergency. It also has a small chapel for regular religious services. And it boasts the largest deep freeze in the world. Here is enough food to feed the camp for several months. Everything from steak to fruit salad. The modern spacious kitchens provide a well-balanced and appetizing menu. To satisfy the enormous appetites that working in this climate produces means extra rations, but there's always more than enough. Except for the fact that they have no windows, the men of Camp Century live exactly as do other soldiers. Their quarters are modern, spacious, comfortable, and are not lacking in any detail.
Groovy music, baby.
Today, Camp Century is being operated as a year-round Arctic research center. The men who built the camp have long since been replaced by military and civilian scientists from the Polar Research and Development Program. As part of man's efforts to probe deeper and deeper into the secrets of the universe, an elaborate program of tests and experiments is being carried out. At this very moment, somewhere, men from Camp Century are at work, within the city itself or out on the ice cap. Only muckluck remains from the original contingent. This is the story of Camp Century, of the Army engineers who carved out the underground city, of the many other men of the United States Army who made this project possible, and of man's never-ceasing quest for knowledge.
Well, that's pretty cool. But of course, under the ice, they had those nukes. The end. Okay, we have more. And yeah, we are going to have to dump off YouTube for copyright reasons, because we're going to move on now to the beginning or the end. Another movie that is Cold War era. A movie that is supposed to be really about